Welcome back to another tutorial. This time we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and that's because I had the idea during office hours where we were talking about sort of old Logix, new Logix, and stuff like that. And I thought it might actually be beneficial for me to show you how I might have built something back when I started playing back in 2019, and then how I might build the same thing today with sort of future proofing and things like that available. This is just to show you like how wide and varied the approaches to building something is, and also to show you how I've changed my approach in building stuff as new features have been added, or in some cases as features that already existed in Neos have been made aware of or been educated to me, or I've discovered them, etc. and stuff like this. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to be building the same thing twice. I'll show you what we'll be building. So we're going to be building my take on this thing here. This is a sort of document viewer thing that you can find inside Essential Tools, Polylogix Tools, and its document viewer. So you can add pictures to this. We won't be doing the adding part, just the display and the flipping between them. So you've got picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, and flipping between those. How I might do that in old Logix or old Neos, and how we might do it in the future. For my copy of this, we're just going to be going between these 3 images here. These are actually slots of pieces of text on them. I didn't have any pictures. I didn't want to hop into Photoshop for a while and make them. So these are just objects, and we're going to be flopping between them with next and previous buttons, exactly how the object works. I'm also going to introduce a new piece of overlay for the top left here, just to make it clear. So we turn that on now. So you should see in the top left corner there, old, which indicates that, hey, we're about to start making it in the old way of doing things. In the office hours, I did joke about making this maybe sepia toned or whatever, but I didn't want to do that because that might distract from the actual ability to follow along. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate these because, of course, we're going to need 2 copies, one for the old, one for the new. And then I'll poke the copy that we use for the new. I'll just poke those out the door. They would actually probably start the same way, which is where I would go ahead and first of all collapse them all together using the developer tooltip. So let's go ahead and do that. I also used the up arrow here to create a parent that exists above all of them. This just makes it very easy to collapse them all into the same location. And you know what, we'll actually go ahead and save that once we've collapsed them, so we won't need this copy. I'll collapse them first. Changing my plan already. Position, rotation, scale. Position, rotation, and scale. So now they're all on top of each other. We'll go ahead and we'll duplicate that and move one off to the left here so we can do the new copy. Alrighty, so for the old copy, what I probably would have done is not use any components, and I would have just hard-coded it manually. So I would have probably seen this and done this and done, hey, these are my slides. And then I would have immediately gone into Logix land. I actually don't have a Logix tooltip out. Let me go ahead and grab one. And I would have said, okay, so we're going to need a variable to determine what slide we're on, which slide should be displayed there. So I would have gone to variable, storage, value register, not exactly here because the node menu's changed a little bit, but I still would have used one of these nodes. And then I would have said, okay, so if this is equal to 0, because computers start at 0, if this is equal to 1. When I say old, I really do mean my first couple of weeks inside Neos. I'm just being a little bit contrived here. For those of you who are screaming at me like, hey, you don't do it like this. Yeah, I get it. Like, this is like how I would have done it in 2019. I don't recommend doing it like this. So I would have said, hey, 1. I want that to be active when that. I want 2. to be active when that is like that, and I want 3 to be active when that is true. So I've got here is this variable I've created. If it's 0, we turn on the first one. If it's 1, we turn on the second one. And if it's 2, we turn on the third one. Remember, computers start at 0. It's a thing you just have to kind of get used to. So I've got that set up, and then I'd be like, all right, well, now I need some buttons. And I would have said, okay, cool, so buttons. So I would have gone create new object, new CUI button. And then I would have inspected this and been like, oh, I wanted to say next and previous. So I'll do next with a T on the end there. And then I would have also needed a second button for previous. And then I would have started hooking these up. Now, I would probably hook them up in the naive way, and I really do want to be sure I'm very clear about this one because it's a pet peeve of mine right now. Do not hook up buttons in the way that I'm about to hook them up. You will have lots of issues if you do it this way. But once again, this will be 2019 Neos or 2019 Prime, whichever way you want to look at that. So now we have our next and previous buttons, and I would have probably done the cardinal sin. I would have gone flow far on true is pressed. Yay. Do not do this. So then I've got this will be next and this will be previous. If this is confusing you, make sure to check out some beginner Logix tutorials. Even old Logix you need to understand the basics of Logix to get through it. And then I would have gone to actions and I would have done plus plus and minus minus, and I would have hooked those both up to this variable. Another topic at the office hours was about the 3D nature of Logix, and I hope I'm showing you that right now. It is messy, but that's because stuff was messy back then. So now I've got that hooked up. Of course, there's a problem here in that it will allow you to go over and under, like it will let you flow above and below. So what we need to do here is use an if. Again here, such that if this value here is less than 2, we're able to add, and if this value is not 0, then we are able to take away. So if this value is not, and then I would have probably put these next to our slides here. Next and previous. Parented them together with our slides. So I'll probably make another parent above the slides, call this slide viewer. And then I can parent both of my buttons to it. So there's the previous button parented. There's the next button parented. I would have made a new slot, called it Logix. And then packed those underneath. And then next, previous, and we can't go under, and we can't go over. That's probably how I would have done it. It would have probably looked like this. I do need to turn off the grabbable on both these buttons. And grabbable on the slide, actually, because the slide itself can move. That's fun. And then maybe I would have attached a grabbable to the top here. And there we go. So that would be 2019 slide viewer. I hope you can see how that might not be that ideal, right? We had a lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of manual stuff here. For example, adding an additional slide, so an additional thing, so we needed slide 4, would be difficult there, right? We'd have to unpack the logic again. Maybe if we added a set button, such as like, hey, I want to go to a specific slide in the slide deck, that would have also been difficult. So that is the old setup. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on the shelf here. And I've got to change my little display that I hastily put together to new. Now we'll move on to how I might do it today. So we start with the same approach, which is these 3 slides. And this time, go ahead and disable grabbable on them before I even start. Excellent. Let's bring them back into the world here. Now this time I would have used, in the new world of things, this is using all the knowledge I have obtained, I would have gone ahead and used a great component called the Boolean switcher. So I'm going to go ahead and link in the video description the Boolean switcher tutorial, but we'll go over it briefly here as well. If you go to attach component to transform drivers Boolean switcher, and we're on the top of the slides here, and then we do auto add children. What we now have is these are out of order, so we'd have to do that. Have to reorder these, that's okay. So we're gonna reorder all of these a little bit. So 2, 1, 3 goes underneath there. Sorry, I put them in a weird order, so there we go. Get rid of those two. We're back. There we go. 1, 2, 3. That's better. So now I've got that set up as this component. This active index here will change which slide we're on. Let's also order these in this area as well. So that'll be 0. That'll be 1. And that'll be 2. There we go. Now they're ordered in both views. So this Boolean switcher here allows us to switch between those slides without doing that sort of weird comparison checks that existed inside the logics in our previous example for the old logic. So now here I can go ahead and I can say, hey, I want to go to slide 1. I want to go to slide 2. Actually, that's 3. The computers start at 0. So I want to go to slide 1. I want to go to slide 2. I want to go to slide 3. And I can just type in a number into this active index and it will handle it for me. What's great about this is, say I wanted to add another slide. So here's slide 4. I can do that because now we have slide 4 here. I can go ahead, change this to 3, and we'll end up on 4, and we're on slide 4. No new color there, but we can see that now says 4. So, it was easy to add additional slides there without any effort there, and there we'd have to do quite a lot of effort. Next, hooking that up to some UI. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to make another parent slot so we can start moving stuff around. But the reason we're also making another parent slot here is so we can do a little bit of dynamic variables. This is going to be a little bit complicated. The reason behind that is I want to show you how I'm building stuff in the new, how I would build stuff for future planning involved. So let's go ahead and name that slide viewer. If you're new to dynamic variables, please do check the links in the description to that tutorial area. Follow along with this tutorial if you'd like, building it in the old and new way, and then just see how things feel. So here I'm going to go ahead and add a data dynamic variable space. Just leave that blank. That's totally fine. But we'll add a variable, and we're going to add a variable called data dynamic value variable int, and we'll just call this slide number. And now we've got a number here. What we can do is go back to our slides and drive the Boolean switcher using that number. Now I haven't really gained anything here because this is once again a contrived example, but what we've gained here is the ability to separate the Boolean switcher from our data, if you like. So this data is now separate from our Boolean switcher. So I just copy across slide number here and then drop the active index to target. Now these things are all linked and I don't need to worry about the Boolean switcher anymore. All I need to do is just update our dynamic variable and everything will again work as planned. Now we can start doing more variables here to kind of add a few more things. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and I'm going to call this slide count. And for slide count, what I'm going to do is a tiny piece of logic to count the number of slides that exist here. So if I go slides, and then I go to slots, children count, the children count of this will be 4. But we actually want to -1 from that number because we're using indexes for the slide numbers. So we'll do that with -1. And then this will be the highest number that we can go to in our slide count before we should stop. And we'll use that in just a moment. Now I'm going to go ahead and drive this dynamic value variable with that. Link this up. And I will pack that into a slot called slide total. Or do slide count to be consistent with our naming here. Because that's all it does. It's just, 2 nodes, pack it away. We don't need to see it again. And so what we've now got here, our slide viewer layer, is we've got the slide number that we're currently on and the slide count that we can go all the way up to, which is 3. And so with that sorted, it will automatically grow as we add more slides. So if we added like, I don't know, 10, 20 slides, this would continue increasing. This would work automatically. We wouldn't have to touch the Boolean switcher. We just add more slides in. Let's now hook up the buttons. And again, we're going to hook up the buttons using those variables, which makes it a lot easier for them to work. So we will use the same create new UI button. These days I might use like a UIX button or something like that, but just for the purposes of the tutorial, these buttons are still quick to use. Although these days I can't stand that slant, so I just zero out the slant. I just think a square button looks better. I'm going to go ahead and disable grabbable already. Now with this button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take that dynamic variable and create it here as well. I'll talk about why that is in a moment. Dynamic value variable int, and then I just copy this name across, which is slide number. Then I'm going to go to attach component, common UI, button interactions, button value shift, button value shift int. There is a video tutorial on button value shift, which is linked in the video description. And I'm going to go ahead and say that the target value is this slide number. Then I'm going to go attach another component, and I'm going to say data dynamic, and this time dynamic value variable driver. This will drive a property like we did earlier for the active index, and this time I'm going to use the slide count. And I'm going to set that target value to be the maximum. I'm going to set the minimum to also be 0. This will update in just a second. The delta that we want for this button, because it will be the next button, is 1, and this will add 1 to the slide count. And then if we go ahead and parent this button into our little setup, we will reset its position and its rotation, and then we'll bring it down to about where it should be, and we'll change the text to next. We will double check our work down at the bottom here with these dynamic variables. So yep, here you can see that it will allow you to continue until it reaches 3, and it won't let you go past 3. It will increase it by 1, and it's driving this number. So this here, this button, isn't actually talking to the Boolean switcher, and it's also not talking to this component here, slide number. There's no Logix ribbon, there's no components, there's no magic there. It's just wirelessly connecting, which I guess is magic, but it's just connecting through the dynamic variable system. And that means that I could, if there's another system that uses slide number as a dynamic variable name, it would also work with that. So I can start doing sort of portability with my button. I'm going to name this one next. And make sure that text does say next. And that should be our next button working. Yep. And you'll see it won't go past 4. If we go ahead and duplicate our next button, move it to the left, and then we will go ahead and... Is this the one we have selected? Yep, that's the one we selected. Okay. Name this previous. Go into its actual text, name it previous, go back up to the button here, scroll down to the bottom where the button value shift is, change this to a -1, and we're done. So it'll go next, it'll stop at 4, it'll go previous, and we can go all the way to 1. And it won't go below, and it won't go above, so we don't have any problems with sort of negative slide count or anything like that. And just to demonstrate how I need to change absolutely nothing to add an additional slide, let's go here, duplicate this. We've now got slide 5. Type in 5 up here. And then without me doing anything, that's all I did. I just made another slide. It works. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that'll work for however many we need. And there you go. There's how I would make it using old and new logic. I hope you can see the difference there. And there is a little bit of sort of, what's the word? Extrapolation and a little bit of sort of obtuseness there. It is contrived in the example that we're doing here. If I was making this in reality, I might not have done as much dynamic variable manipulation as I did there, but I'm just showing you that because it illustrates the sort of principle of, well, you know, there's too many Logix ribbons everywhere. You know, there's stuff everywhere. It looks a mess. That's actually quite clean. like that will continue working with as many slides as possible. It's modular in that I can take that next and previous button and transplant them between two copies. So a good example of that, actually. So if I were to go ahead and go up to the top here, duplicate our setup. So we've got two copies of our slide viewer. And then if I stole the next button from the left one, and I reparented it to our left one, and then, I don't know, moved it over so it's in the middle here, it'll still work, and it won't trigger this one. It'll trigger this one because of the way dynamic variables work. That's another example of why I would do it in that particular way. I do hope you're seeing it's a little bit contrived, but I do hope that helped. I just explain the difference between old and new. We all learn things as we go, so a lot of that is on the old one was me just not knowing how Logix worked, and a lot of the new one was actually features coming up as they were added. So we didn't used to have dynamic variables. We didn't used to have the button value shift component, or the Boolean switcher wasn't known about as well. I think I was the sort of first person to publicize its use. Various things like that. If you see a slide system like that, Boolean switcher is the way to go. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I'll get back to you with another one soon. Bye-bye.